Pokemon and grass. They go together like peanut butter and jelly, because without grass, you wouldn't be able to find wild Pokemon. But what if I were to break Pokemon code and try to avoid grass for as long as possible in every generation of Pokemon? Now, when I say grass, I mean the actual wild grass where Pokemon can be found, not the little patches of green that are next to the main path. Also, I will not be utilizing any walkthrough wall glitches or anything along those lines, as that would just make this video pointless. One more thing, shout out to Nathaniel Bandy's video where he tried to avoid grass in every Mario game, as that's what gave me the idea to make this video. Anyways, without further ado, it's time to actually take my mom's advice for once, and to see if I can stay out of the wild grass in every generation of Pokemon. To make this simple, I'm going to go in chronological order, beginning with Generation 1. So after booting up a new game file and not saying a single word to my mom before we left, I realized that Professor Oak wasn't even in his lab. I also couldn't surf south of Pallet Town, which forced us to walk into the grass on Route 1. Oh, now you want to show up, Professor Oak? Yeah, it's too late for that, buddy. Moving on to Generation 2, this time around, Professor Elm was actually in the lab, so we were able to receive our starter Pokemon. Once again, I don't have Surf, so I can't leave town to the east, meaning I could only get drop-kicked in the face by this random kid before coming across Route 29. Unfortunately, these tiny little ledges are only one way, thanks to the protagonist being the most unathletic 10-year-old, so I was forced to take a step into the ugly green stuff. I mean, we did get the starter this time around though, so that's progress. Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire started out in a similar way, with us talking to our mom and checking out the rest of the town. This time around though, we did venture into Route 101, and not only did we get to choose our starter Pokemon, but we got to battle a wild Poochyena. That's progress, people. Professor Birch thanked us for saving him by giving us a Pokédex and telling us to meet his daughter on Route 103. Well, here's the problem, Professor Birch. Your daughter walked through grass, which is something I cannot do. Generation 4 didn't get off to a great start, as Barry gave us a concussion when he barged out of his house. We then met up with him on Route 201, in order to check out Lake Verity, where Professor Rowan and Dawn somehow left behind their briefcase with a very rare Pokemon in it. What? No, Barry, I can't go in the grass. No, I can't do that. Barry, stop. No! Pokemon Platinum. It began in a similar way, with Barry giving us even more permanent brain damage. However, we were able to choose our starter on Route 201, and even get revenge on Barry for his recklessness. Eventually, we once again headed towards Lake Verity with Barry, but he didn't force us to walk in the grass this time. Instead, we observed a weird Sonic-looking guy before being left to travel through Route 201 on our own. But because Game Freak is obsessed with putting these stupid ledges right at the beginning of the game, we failed yet again. Generation 5 was a nice little refresh, as not only did I get to pick my starter, but we got to participate in 2 rival battles. That's a new record, guys. We then met up with Professor Juniper, who told us to meet her on Route 1. Well, as long as my rivals don't force me into the grass like Barry did. Ooh, that was close. Y'all had me there for a second. It didn't matter though, because after the catching tutorial, there was nowhere else to go, thanks to this patch of grass taking up the entire freaking path. Unfortunately, Pokemon Black and White 2 were much of the same. I mean, sure, I got my starter, received the Pokédex, defeated our rival, and got to explore the relatively big Aspertia City. But on Route 19, the grass covered the whole path. Nah, seriously, where's the Unova Lawn Care Company, because this is getting out of hand. It would be nice to at least make it to the next town in one of these games. Hey, what do you know? In Pokemon X and Y, you can make it to the next town without touching grass. Sure, Vanderbilt Town can barely be considered a town, and Route 1 is 20 feet long, but we still reached Aquacord Town. Here we grabbed a very underrated starter in my opinion, received the Pokédex, and knocked out Shauna's Froakie. From there, I handed the professors a letter to my mom before checking out a makeshift Pokemon Center and Pokemart. However, right past Aquacord Town is Route 2, where it's mandatory to walk through this patch of grass. You know what? That's okay though. We're making really solid progress. Pokemon Sun and Moon kept the good vibes going as we were able to avoid the wild grass and make our way to Iki Town. We then risked our lives for a girl that we just met, because that's always a good idea, before selecting our starter. We even defeated Hau in the first rival battle. The next day though, some idiot couldn't control their Tauros, so we were forced to take a different route, which of course had grass that took up the entire path. But hey, we once again made it to the next town, and even saw a legendary Pokemon before stepping foot into the wild grass. So there's no way Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon would take a step backwards. Yeah, Ultra Sun and Moon took a step backwards. All we did was wake up, get our starter again, and then Professor Kukui basically forced us to walk into this patch of grass. Yeah, this just reminded me why Generation 7 is my least favorite. Pokemon Shield didn't provide me any sort of hope, as all we were able to do was grab our starter and somehow defeat Hop when he had 2 team members and I only had 1. But because we got forced into the Slumbering Weld in order to save a dumb Wooloo, there was no way for me to avoid this patch of grass. I mean, really, Game Freak? We're 8 generations in and you're still forcing us to walk through grass right at the beginning of the game. Alright, Generation 9 is our last chance. The game started off as usual with us picking a starter and taking down our rival Nemona. From there we moved on to Poco Path, which only had grass off to the side of the main path. I did have to be careful when walking towards the cliff to see Miraidon though. After exiting the cave with the legendary beast, things got a little tricky as we immediately got put in front of a patch of grass. At first, I thought I could hug the side of the cliff and slowly make my way around it. However, some grass was blocking the way, so I resorted to a small little opening that I saw in between a few of the blades of grass. I don't know if I should count this, but we never ran into a wild Pokemon, and I made sure to not directly touch one of the blades of grass. I think the movement of my body may have caused some wind to blow the grass, but I believe that I made it through without touching the grass directly. From that point, it was easy to get back on the main path in order to reach the lighthouse where we beat Arven in a battle. It was then time to continue down Poco Path in order to reach Los Platos. It was at this point when it hit me though. Because the routes in the Paldea region are so big and open, it's relatively easy to stick to the main path and avoid the wild grass. I had no issues reaching the entrance to Mesagoza, but it was here when I checked the map to look at each route and see if it has a main pathway. And from what I saw, each route does have a main path that can take you from city to city while avoiding the wild grass. Now obviously I wasn't going to play through the entire game just to show this off, but it seems as though you can complete all 3 storylines without coming into contact with the wild grass. As for Area 0, I couldn't find a good enough map of the place, but I would assume that you can get through it as well, considering that it's also very open. Well, if you count that tricky area of Poco Path as me not touching the grass, then you can make it all the way through Pokemon Scarlet and Violet while avoiding the wild grass. It's nice to see that after 9 generations, Game Freak finally came to their senses and didn't make it mandatory for the player to have to walk through grass. I had a lot of fun making this video, as it was nice to play through Pokemon games with a different goal in mind, as opposed to the usual beat as many trainers as you can and become the champion. For now though, I hope you guys enjoyed, have a great rest of your day, and until next time, deuces!